good, huh? Well, at this time, I'm going to bring down the writer and director of Future, Rob Cousineau. Well, thanks for being here. And yeah, he really made a huge effort after missing his flight last night and drove from Detroit, Michigan through the night. So we're just so happy that you're here. Thanks again for coming. Well, what inspired you to make Future?
My little brother had written a script. We knew we wanted to make a film. My little brother had written a script that meant a lot to him, and then I kind of reworked it with him. I directed that with my business partner, Chris Rossick. We're co-directors. We call ourselves Get Super Rad, kind of like the Daniels, but without money. But yeah, I mean, it was important to me to make a film. We knew we wanted to make a movie that didn't fit into a mold. We wanted to make something that lived in like transitions, and it didn't have the standard formula. And we wanted something that didn't really fit any particular genre, but had a little bit of all the stuff we like in it. So when Josh gave us a script about this kid who sells his soul to get a do-over, I liked it because it took someone who suffers from depression and kind of, you always see in films, there's like when you introduce a ticking clock, all of a sudden everyone's life becomes insane. It's all this crazy shit's happening, everything's great, everything's wild, but if you suffer from depression real bad and somebody's like, you have 3 days left, you're probably going to take naps and eat Twizzlers and pizza and hate yourself. And then we also kind of wanted to take that stereotypical film character and put him next to this kid with depression. So that way it's kind of like almost like Weekend at Bernie's. We have this crazy party guy trying to drag around this suicidally depressed guy to try to, get his own things going on, but use this depressed guy as an excuse to do so. So that was kind of where it came from. And then we also, I got to tell you, this was a huge learning experience for us. This was our first narrative. And when we shot it as scripted, it was a 3.5-hour film. So I screwed up big time when I wrote it, and we had to fix it in the edit. Full disclosure. But it ended up being good. Like, we had a lot of good stuff, and I'm glad we had the extra stuff because I got to learn a lot when we made it. And this was like a master class for us because next film we make, we know a lot more, and I know what to do and what not to do.
Nice. Yeah, because if I didn't mention it before, this is Rob's first feature-length film. So I guess it wound up being longer because it was so personal to you with your brother being involved.
Yeah, it was also just like, you learn all these rules. I think people tell you all these rules when you're making a movie. Like, it's a minute a written page, and you hear all these things. That script was 82 pages, and it was way more than a minute a written page because it was so dialogue heavy, and that was something we didn't understand until we filmed it. Like, we boarded everything out, we kind of laid out all the lighting setups, we knew how we wanted to capture it. There was definitely like a feeling we had all the important high-level stuff. The learning experience came in through like the execution of dialogue and working with actors. Like, I do commercial work a lot, and most of the stuff I do is car commercials because I live in Detroit. So most of the time working with actors, I'm just telling people to smile next to a truck. You know what I mean? So this is like a very different experience for me to like study up and like try to learn different methods. And my little brother is a student of theater. He graduated with a degree in it. And the time traveler dude, he's just a comedian we know. It's just this weird, filthy mouth comedian we know who actually became like a super strict Orthodox Jewish person right before we filmed. And we thought he was like doing a bit because he used to do this incredibly profane, horrible stand-up all the time. And he showed up with like the sit-sits on and the hat on and everything. We thought he was messing with us. So that's why he always has a hat on in the film. It was the only way for it to like work with his religion. And he's like a very healthy, thoughtful person. And he just kind of like channeled the worst version of what he used to do in his stand-up for that character. But he's a really great guy.
That's awesome. Yeah, you definitely did a great job, and so did your brother. Because I know from my personal experience, because I've struggled with depression, I mean, you could like feel it really, and I just thought he did a great job, and yeah, it was a great film. Let's see if our audience has any questions.
Anybody?
So at the end, is it possible it was just some guy getting his agenda done for the government? It was just fucking
We kind of wanted, so we wrote 4 endings and we shot it 4 ways, right? And me and my business partner Chris had like a fight. Like I wanted it to end where like you see him in his bed at the end and you see the contract next to the wall, and Chris hated that when we were writing it. And Chris wanted it to end as though the time traveler guy was just messing with him and just got him to do this terrible thing. And we ended up using the ending that Chris ended up loving the ending that I wrote that he hated, and I hated that. So we ended up using kind of a mix of the two. So we even shot a version where the guards like take their masks off, and the last line of the movie is he did it, and they're like freaked out because they were just trying to get off on seeing what they could make someone do. But really, we decided that it was more about like, and this sounds like such a cop-out like answer, but we decided it was more about like the characters and how they felt versus like the actual answer. So we kind of left it up to the crowd. Is kind of how we did it. I mean, the way I see it is he time traveled, and Freddy, the time traveler at the end, just feels real shitty because he actually made an effort to make his life better. And this one time, and I had this idea about like there's this thing called the bootstrap paradox in time travel where like if something starts, it's always a loop. And I had this idea that it's always Doug doing this. So this dude always comes back and always uses the same guy and knows he's going to do it to him again. But this time, Doug tried something to better himself, and he still had to take that from him so they can keep doing it. And so that's why he has that reaction at the end. But like I said, I kind of would rather leave it up to people, but, you know, that's what I think. I mean, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, in your non-genre approach to filmmaking, are you working on another script? You have something coming up now?
So I actually have like a bunch of stuff coming up. So I'm producing a documentary called The Russian Five. I don't know how much you guys know about hockey in Detroit, but in the 90s there was the Red Wings had this line of all Russians, and it was unheard of. Like European athletes were basically, you know, like they were just like completely shit on in professional sports. Like nobody wanted these Russians showing up taking American jobs, and so I'm producing this doc that my buddy Joshua Reel's directing. About the Russian Five. I'm currently co-directing again with my partner, a documentary about my best friend since I was 13. It's called Can't See Shit. He named it himself. He's a artist who suffers from cystic fibrosis, and after a double lung transplant, he lost his vision, and he learned to paint again. So he's been building his career as an artist, and he's going to die soon. So we've been touring around with him. He builds his career as an artist so he can leave a mark that lives longer than he does. And then I have a new script that we just finished that we're hoping to shoot that I have to get money for, which is the hard thing. But we actually, Future just does have distribution. We just can't announce it yet. But I do have a script. It's very like lynchy and strange. My father passed away. God, everything I say sounds so fucking depressing. I swear to God, I'm like a fun person. My father passed away, and when he got sick, I thought it would be interesting to explore the idea of someone being isolated in a place that's so quiet that physical representations of grief would like approach him and talk to him. And if the place was quiet enough and he was focused enough, he could kind of hear things from the other world. So these things kind of start slipping in. So it's like a little bit more straight horror, but it's very like psychological. And then I have another project with my buddy Joshua Mallerman. He's a best-selling author. He wrote the book Bird Box that Netflix is making into a $43 million feature, which I would kill to have, you know, $500,000 to make a movie. But we have a project coming out called Who Watches Over Catherine Clover? And we're working on raising the money for that, but it's about a woman who can't feel fear because something is protecting her. And that's kind of the idea of like if someone had a guardian angel, how terrifying that would actually be, you know? So lots of stuff.
Wow. How about anybody else? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I know you're from Michigan. Was this all filmed in that state? Or?
Yeah. So we filmed almost the entire film in Rochester Hills. I was very fortunate. Like I said, we do a lot of commercial work. That's how I make my living. I'd like it to be more creative stuff in the future, but commercial work's fine. But my makeup artist was moving from one house to another, so we just rented her old house for a week, and we dressed it like the kind of junky house, and then the nicer house that the drug dealer kid lived in. That was her new house that she hadn't moved into yet. So we had 2 empty houses. So that's how we could shoot like the bulk of the film. My little brother worked at Tivana, which is that little Starbucks tea store or whatever, which he hated. It was like soul sucking. He worked at this very like wealthy area mall. People would come in and just treat him like crap. Luckily, a friend of mine owned a coffee house that we could dress up like a corporate tea store. I'm trying to think where else we even shot. But yeah, it was all right in like 4 square miles in Michigan, the whole movie.
Huh. Well, since we brought up about filming locations, this is your first time to North Carolina, isn't it?
I think so. I may have filmed a truck commercial here like 4 years ago, but I was in and out like one day.
Right. Well, and actually, it turned out to be great that you got to drive here, or maybe it was still dark when you were coming through.
No, it was bright. The sun came up somewhere in like Virginia, so I saw all this area. This area is incredible.
Yeah. So what do you think of North Carolina? Do you think maybe did you see anything? Because you said you were just talking about like a remote location.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We have somewhere called Buffalo City around here. Anyway, this is a very kind of it's a different place. You know, we have the beach, but it's not like a commercialized beach, and we have the swamps and the cotton fields over the other bridge, and just, you know, historical landmarks everywhere. Would you ever consider maybe coming here?
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, when I saw like the morning light like across the swamps, and I was just thinking about like how you could make something that's like incredibly beautiful there, but also so isolated and frightening.
Yes.
when I was coming in.
Yes, for sure. And we've actually had some local filmmakers do some films based on that, and yeah, the Lost Colony, like, it's creepy here.
That's Roanoke's here, right? Yeah. Okay, I know about that.
We got to get you to sign our poster, but first-time feature filmmaker, and you're gonna go places, so this might be your chance, you know, like, yeah.
And thank you guys so much for watching my movie. I really appreciate it, and I'm stoked to be here. Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you.